We both wish we knew how to be better prepared for incontinence.
We sure do. For incontinence, we've created a 5-part series because there's a lot going on with incontinence.
Yes, there is, and it's coming.
It sure is. The 5 episodes include episode 9, which is preparing for incontinence. Episode 10 is a phrase we coined, pre-incontinence, and when continence first begins. Episode 11 is cleaning our care receiver and the urinary incontinence. And then episode 12 is cleaning our care receiver when they are bedbound or when there's a bowel movement. The final episode in the series, episode 13, is about incontinence overnight.
This is the first in a 5-part series. And in this episode, we're going to talk about being prepared for incontinence because we want you to be more prepared than we were. We have 4 tips.
Yeah.
So, you ready to get started?
I am. Welcome. We're Sue Ryan
And Nancy Treaster.
This podcast brings our years of experience in a variety of family caregiving roles to prepare you to navigate your caregiving journey.
We're sharing our personal experiences, not medical advice. And because it's our passion to support you on your journey, we believe no topic is off limits.
We're bringing you practical tips
And candid conversations.
about the good, the bad, and
yes, the ugly.
in family caregiving.
Let's get started.
What Nancy and I have both learned on our multiple caregiving journeys is this can be one of the hardest areas in our caregiving journey with our care receivers to help them maintain their dignity. And it's also incredibly personal for each of us. It's personal because if it's a spouse or a child or a sibling or a parent, there are different relationships with it. So there's a lot going on. And one of the things that we want to learn about is how to support our care receiver while maintaining their dignity as much as possible, and also listening to ourselves, understanding where we're struggling, understanding where we have a challenge, where this is really something that, we certainly didn't know about ever doing, and it's tough. So we want to make sure that you know that you've got permission to think it's not okay. This is a really tough part of our journey, and reach out for help, reach out for support, reach out to us, reach out to a support group, talk to your family members. So don't feel like just because there was a diagnosis and just because you're now a caregiver that you should know how to do all of this, or that you should feel okay with it and that you should be equipped to handle it on your own. All of these things are things that we're going to be walking through. So it's really important for us to do that. The other thing that's really important is to understand this is going to change throughout our journey. There's an evolution of it. There's the time when they're not really incontinent, the time when they're just beginning to be incontinent, the time when it becomes it's urinary incontinence, usually in the very beginning, and then later on it's with a bowel movement. And so when we talk about throughout the episodes we're going to be sharing about all the different tips, we always talk about staying fully present in the moment. And it's very important for us to stay fully present. In this area, though, it's also great for us to be learning what's coming ahead so that we can be prepared, not only physically, mentally, and emotionally, but with supplies and with things to do and with processes and with practicing. And we talk in some of the other episodes about bringing in professionals to help you and teach you. And it's also about having conversations with our loved one. So there's a lot going on with this.
So before we get to the first tip, why don't I talk just a little bit about, we talked about pre-incontinence, what that
Yes.
means. And so when we talk about pre-incontinence, this is really the telegraphing that incontinence is coming. So it's a good opportunity for you to have the warning signs. So you can start to figure out, we all know it's coming, right? There's no avoiding it. So here's some early signs to look for. They likely will stop flushing the toilet.
Yeah.
A friend of mine told me he runs around the house and flushes the toilet all the time. They'll start putting toilet paper in the trash can. Or they have trouble finding the bathroom. They're looking all around and they they're confused about where the bathroom is. These are some really early signs that incontinence is coming, and these can go
Mhm.
on for months. Just to give you a general idea, in my house, this started about 3.5 years after my husband was diagnosed. And
Mhm.
obviously, everybody's journey is different. How long it took
Yeah.
you to get a diagnosis is different.
Right.
But that's about timing wise. So it's not going to happen right away, probably. But it's not going to be, 7 years down the road either. Just to give you, I just feel like I should give them a little, our listeners a little bit of a time frame. What about you, Sue?
Well, I would say both with my dad and with, my husband, it was about the same. But I've heard from other people that it happens very quickly for some of them, and that's based on different diagnoses because every diagnosis impacts our care receivers in a different way. And so please don't use our standard as your standard. The signs Nancy was talking about are really good indicators. Sometimes it's like they're holding themselves or other things, but be observant. This is why when we talk about being present in the moment, be observing them for signs that this is something that has begun for them, that they're looking around and they're struggling a little bit.
Right. And particularly if you go out to
Uh-huh.
dinner or lunch or something, this can be even more challenging because they can't find the bathroom.
They can't go to the bathroom. We have some ways that we supported that as well. And I know for my husband, what I would do is if we were going to go out, I would call the restaurant ahead of time and I would find out what kind of restaurants or what kind of restaurants, what kind of restrooms they had, and if they had just the men's and ladies' rooms, or if they had a family restroom. If we were going to go out with friends and there was a men's room, I would ask for one of the people who was going to go to be my husband's bathroom buddy. And I would make sure we had used the restroom before we left. But what they would do is partway through the meal, they'd be like, I'm going to go use the restroom. Do you want to come with me? So that would be a way of helping them maintain their dignity and also helping them not struggle to figure out where the bathroom was.
Well, that's great. And confidence in terms of them, even if they're not beginning incontinence at this point, you're probably already a little concerned about them finding their way back to the table anyway. So you'll
Yes.
find yourself, if you're not of the same sex as your loved one, if you're of the same sex as your loved one, you'll find yourself going to the bathroom with them at the same time because you want to make sure they know how to get back to the table. And if you're not, you'll find yourself standing
Yeah.
outside the bathroom looking like a crazy person,
No,
trying to
but
make sure that they get
it is
in.
it is really important, and actually got a tip that I used to use. One of the things that I would do if we were going to go someplace and Jack was going to be going to the restroom is that before we left the house, I'd say, "Honey, you are so handsome. I want to take a picture of you." And I would have him stand there with what he had on, and I would take a picture of him. And when we went to the restroom, I would, if he was taking a little bit longer than I thought he should, I would, like, if somebody was coming, I would say, "Excuse me, my husband has dementia. Would you just take, if you see this person in the restroom, you know, could you just make sure he's okay?" And it was just a way, because I can't go in the restroom. And it was a very helpful way to check on them. And sometimes it was just because they don't know. He was usually because he was talking to somebody. He would
Oh,
go
well,
and
that's
strike up
good.
a conversation with someone. So at any rate, but it gives you some peace of mind because you can't go into the restroom. So at any rate,
Yes.
take the picture and then you'll have that.
That's a great point. All right. Well, I talked a little bit about
Yeah.
urinary incontinence
Yep.
and what the early signs were. Let me talk a little bit about the
Sure.
early signs of incontinence itself.
Yes.
So, as you begin the next transition, think of urinary incontinence as reverse potty training. So, when you have a toddler and they've just begun to potty train and they're starting to really catch on towards the end, one of the last things they do is they know they need to go in the potty, but they don't have enough of a connection between they need to go and how much time it's going to take them to get to the potty and get there. So they just don't get there soon fast enough.
Mhm.
That's probably one of the first signs you're going to see for urinary incontinence.
Sure.
Some of it, they'll get there early enough, but they've leaked in their underwear, and then they start not getting there earlier and earlier and earlier. And we'll
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that in terms of preparing when we get to tip 2, in terms of the kind of underwear you might want to transition to so that it's not quite as embarrassing for them when they don't get there fast enough.
Right.
All right, Sue, I think we're ready for tip 1.
Tip 1. And tip 1 for me was talking with my loved one about it. And right after my husband was, I didn't think about this with my dad, Wish I had, and also with several other people. I don't know why it took me that many journeys till I figured it out, but with my husband, right as he was diagnosed, when we were starting to talk about the journey and what was going to be going on, I said, "Honey, you're going to become incontinent. And I want to make sure when you can't tell me what's uncomfortable, that I've already figured out with you what is the best path to do. So if you're open to it," and he thought it was a good idea. And I said, "Let's try on some Depend products and see what you like or don't like." And so we went out and we bought a variety of different products at the store. We bought some the incontinent underwear that's not the Depend, that's still like the cotton underwear that's got some padding in it. We bought several different kinds of Depend-like products. We bought some pads you could put in. We bought a different variety of different things, and he talked about it. So by the time he had become incontinent, we were ready. And then what I did is I started transitioning him. I would have his regular underwear, and when he first started having mistakes, I started the transition. It only took about a week. So I would have his regular underwear and I would have a Depend. And for the first few days, it was a couple times. And then I said, he said, "Well, where are my underwear?" And I said, "Honey, they're all in the laundry. Let's just use these for now. And as soon as I get the laundry done, we'll get them back." And I just never did. And he was fine.
Wonderful. As usual, if you've listened to our previous episodes, you'll find Sue was in the collaborative household. This is not the only collaborative thing Sue and Jack did together. Not so much at my house. So there was a little more supporting behind the scenes, as usual. But excellent advice, Sue, and definitely worth always trying first.
Yeah.
How about tip 2? We ready?
Let's go for tip 2.
Okay, so tip 2 is about researching different kinds of underwear and cleaning supplies, just to have
Yes.
something in your mind so you know when incontinence begins
Right.
what you might want to have on the ready. So there's some early things that you want to do or can do even before you even have the faintest idea that incontinence coming. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
when they start forgetting to flush. So let's talk about researching underwear real quick.
Sure.
Let's go all the way to Depend-like products. When you get to
Okay.
Depend-like products, the pull-ups,
Right.
for men, they are gray and dark gray. For women, they are mostly white.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes more typical to where men and women's underwear are anyway.
Right.
So when you back up and you think, how can I make each transition as simple as possible?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you can do is start with the color underwear that they wear.
Yes.
So my husband wore white jockey briefs, and that's not even an option moving all the way through the process. So the first thing I did was looked into washable incontinence underwear.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about Depend-like products, we're talking about disposable incontinence underwear. And we don't say disposable incontinence underwear because that is a mouthful. So we say Depend or Depend-like product. But washable incontinence underwear is cotton. It has built-in pads, and you wash it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great for those initial can't get to the bathroom quite soon enough and leaking times. Now, for men, it comes in jockey briefs, but it's usually black or gray.
Right.
And it comes in boxer briefs, usually dark colors. Dark colors
Right.
are somewhat better because if you're staining your underwear and not getting there soon enough, you have stains in your underwear anyway. So it's kind of nice to have the darker colors. But one of the first things that you can do is you can change the color of underwear that your loved one is wearing so that
Mm-hmm.
it matches what you think the next phase of underwear you're going to put in their drawer is.
Great
So
suggestion.
what I did is I went from white jockey briefs to black jockey briefs, slowly over a week like you did, before we were even into incontinence, because I
Mm-hmm.
realized these needed to go away so that we could minimize embarrassment with urine stains and we could keep his dignity as long as possible. And it was absolutely no big deal. Now, when you get to washable incontinence underwear, the women's does come in cream colored and white colored, and you
Yes.
might want to just stick with that. Now, some people just use sanitary napkins or poise pads, which they advertise for female incontinence or
Yeah.
just leaks, bladder leaks. So you can, for women, you might women are used to wearing pads, you might can just put a pad in their existing underwear when things transition to sort of the leaky stage.
Yeah.
For men, they're not used to that. So the washable incontinence underwear is probably the best, middle ground you can come up with. Then after you move from washable incontinence underwear, I actually like the ones that had multiple different levels of absorbency,
Yes.
light, medium, or heavy. I found
Mhm.
by the time it was time for heavy absorbency, I just was ready to move into depend, and he was not with it enough to care that much. But for light and medium, we started with light because it does have pad in it, and it is different. It is a little bit less comfortable. We started with light, and then soon I felt we needed to move to medium. So don't buy a bunch of pairs, buy 3 or 4 pairs. You don't need to buy a ton of these because you're gonna
Right.
move through this phase quickly over a few months. And then buy some mediums, absorbencies, and then you can transition between them. If the lights are all dirty, just use a medium one. But transition into that. Now, we're gonna talk about this in episode 13, Incontinence Overnight, because in Incontinence Overnight, you do have to transition into nighttime underwear. At some point, you can't have them. Most people don't wear underwear under their pajamas, but
Right.
they will need to wear underwear to
Yes,
catch
they will.
the
Yeah.
leaks. The other thing that's going to happen is, guess what, guys? Depends or washable incontinence underwear does not come in boxer briefs. So
No.
if your loved one is in boxer briefs, the earlier you get them to agree to, not boxer briefs, if they're in boxer shorts, if the earlier you can get them into like boxer briefs, the better off you'll be, because boxer shorts are out. Now, boxer briefs, they do have those in the washable incontinence underwear. So just a few tips in terms of researching underwear. Then the other thing you're going to want to do potentially is research cleaning products. So you start to have an idea of what to expect, both in terms of cleaning your home as well as cleaning your care receiver.
Mm.
For cleaning your care receiver, we have a whole episode on that. We have 2 episodes on that, episode 11 and episode 12. Episode 11 is about is about cleaning products
Right.
as well as cleaning them when they're urinary incontinent. Episode 12 is about cleaning them if they're bedbound and cleaning them if they're mobile but they have a bowel movement. So
Right.
those 2 episodes, probably the best way to research your cleaning requirements is to listen to one of those 2 episodes, and you'll get a feel for the kind of cleaning products that you need to clean your loved one. You're also going to want some to clean up the messes themselves. In our episode 10, we cover when incontinence begins, and
Mhm.
that includes cleaning your home and all the things you need to do to be ready to protect the things that are in your home and products you might need to leverage to keep your home clean. So we will cover a lot of those in other episodes, and hopefully you can listen to those and pull together what you need. All
And
right,
Nan and
so
Nancy, I wanna call out something that you said, is that you're talking about underwear. Every time you've said it, it's nighttime underwear or
good
it's
point.
pen-like. Would you share the importance of that? And you've got some stories about that as well.
Yes, first I'm on a dementia caregiver support Facebook group, and it is amazing the number of people who'll say, "I'm changing my loved one's diaper," and I'm telling you, people jump on them, rightly so. Remember, Sue
Mm.
started this. We're trying to protect their dignity.
Yes.
We're trying there believe me, I'm sure they would rather have go to the bathroom in the toilet and
Oh,
not
yeah.
have to go through everything that you're gonna go through these 5 episodes. So, let's try to help them be as dignified as possible, and calling what you're putting on them a diaper is not dignified. So first, let's don't do that. And then I have a friend who made the mistake of calling it a pull-up because it was a pull-up, and his wife won't touch him because that's what you call what toddlers wear. So underwear, underwear, underwear. It's their new
Underwear.
underwear, and this is gonna be their underwear for the rest of their
Yeah.
journey, so let's just call it their underwear. Thank you for
Yes.
bringing that up, Sue.
You're very welcome. Yeah. It's helpful to just have that be the language that you use all the time, is that it's their underwear. And it is. It's their underwear.
Of course it is.
So,
All right,
yeah.
tip 3?
All right, tip 3 is preparing ourselves. This part of our caregiving journey takes a lot of work, and it's not going to stop. Once it begins, it's not going to stop. It's going to become continuous, and there's a lot that's going to be going on. And so It's reasonable. It's completely reasonable. You wouldn't know what to do. You didn't go to school for this. This isn't something that you practiced. This isn't something that you signed up for. And depending on who your care receiver is, it can be incredibly awkward for you. It can be
Mhm.
a relationship where you just don't feel comfortable with. So there are
Well,
a
and
lot
you
of
said sometimes in support groups, you've heard people say their spouses, and they never talked about toileting
yeah,
uh, and they're married. So,
they've been married for
it's
years and they never talked about it. And it was surprising to them that
yeah,
they realized we'd each go to the bathroom, but we never talked about they just never did. So it was
right.
never really a part of their, it was never really a part of their filter. One of the really important things, and this is great for us to do in the beginning before we're needing to care for our loved one, it requires strength. We've got to be strong enough, sometimes to help support them standing up, sometimes to help them, while they're standing, but sometimes to help lift them up when they're sitting in a chair, sometimes to support them when they're sitting and they're moving around and they're fidgeting, and sometimes when they're on the toilet and we've got to try to shift there. And so, one of the things that it's good for you to explore way ahead before you need it is physically, what are the demands of what this is going to be? And can you actually do that? Now, Nancy, you've also got a story when you were evaluating this of what you did.
So I decided that well, first I was a runner. And so I was consistent about my aerobic exercise, my running, but I never did any strength training. And it became clear to me that I needed upper body strength in order to continue to care for my husband. So
Mhm.
I started strength training. I still do it
Yeah.
to this day to try to build up enough upper body strength to be able to be a better caregiver.
And it's reasonable. This can be an inflection point. Throughout all of the podcasts that we have, we're talking about places that are inflection points for whether you can do this on your own or whether you will benefit from outside help either in your home or continue going into a continuous care community. With my husband, he's a much bigger gentleman than I am, and so I had those considerations of would I be able to help support him when he was getting up when we were, the ways that we were doing that. So it's reasonable that's going to be happen. It's also very important for us to be open and honest about how we feel about this and reach out for support. Talk to our family members, go to support groups, get counseling. Some people have gotten counseling on it. Talk with our loved one and make sure that as this part of our journey begins, that we're in the right place for it mentally, again, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And then also whether those other people in our lives who may also be helping with changing them, if we're going out and they're going to be there, if they're comfortable doing that. And so, Nancy, let's go to tip 4 because you've got a very important point about that.
So tip 4 is about being understanding that it's not just our boundaries that we have to evaluate, it's the boundaries of other people that we're going to ask to caregive for our loved one. And when we're preparing for incontinence, we're
Mhm.
preparing for a new phase of caregiving.
Yeah.
And this truly is a boundary a lot of people are not comfortable with. In episode 8, I talk with my older son who was helping me periodically with my husband. And I had to, he had helped me when I had to go out of town. And then once my husband became incontinent, I didn't really think about it. This was very early, maybe even the first week or two of him being incontinent. And I needed some help for half a day. And I asked my son, was he willing to help? And he said, I got to be honest, Mom, if it includes changing dad, I'm not comfortable with it. Well, shame on me. I never even thought about that. Um, so we're in the preparing episode here. So we're
Right.
talking about being prepared. So if you have other people who help you care for your loved one, ask them where their boundaries are. Don't make them be brave enough to tell you. This
Yeah.
is the chance and time to ask them.
This is one of those places where when we talk about giving ourselves grace, this is a place where you give yourself tons of grace. Tons of grace to your family members. Have conversations about this. It's not necessarily going to be easy. It's important, and the sooner you do this, and the more that you can get this figured out before it becomes the part of your journey that where you actually are into incontinence, the easier it's going to be for everyone.
I agree. Okay, let's summarize.
All right.
This is our first episode in a 5-part series on incontinence. In this episode, we talked about preparing for incontinence,
Mhm.
and we shared 4 tips. The first one, talk to your loved one. Brilliant idea, Sue. Talk to your loved one about it before it ever
Hey.
starts.
Yeah, there you
Love
go.
it. Second one, research underwear options and research cleaning so that you're prepared.
Mhm.
Third one, prepare yourself. Really give yourself some grace. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Absolutely.
And the fourth one is allow others to have boundaries and have those conversations as well. Don't wait until it's an issue. Have
Right.
those conversations now. If you have tips that you think would help people prepare for incontinence, please put those out on our Facebook page or our Instagram page. Those links are in our show notes.
Mhm.
Also, if you like this podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review it. Thank you very much. Those links
Yes,
are
thank
also in
you.
the show notes. And any products we discuss in this podcast are also in the show notes. Now, preparing for incontinence is just that. It's preparing.
Yeah.
But as Sue said, we want you to understand as much as you can about what's getting ready to happen because there's a lot going on with incontinence and it's a lot to emotionally get your head wrapped around.
Mhm.
It does get easier. It gets harder before it gets easier. So it
It
starts
sure
off
does.
slow, then it gets really hard, and then it does get easier. So it's up to you to figure out
But it's
where
not going away.
it's not. And it's up to you to figure out where in this process you need to stop or if you can handle it all the way through.
Yeah. We're all on this journey together.
Yes, we are.